So let me look at personalist ideologies for language study. These are the humanistic or social cohesion values arguments. And they're often espoused by teachers of majority language students learning a language by personal choice, often a world language or a foreign language, as we call them. Yeah. And here's an example, Elizabeth's foreign language learning biography, which was collected by one of my undergraduate students at Georgetown. Elizabeth says, in middle school, my Japanese teacher drew a diagram of little plots of land divided by fences. My teacher said that when a person speaks one language, they can only speak to people inside their own fenced area. She then erased one of the fences and said that learning a new language is like tearing down a fence. And every time a person learns another language, they expand the number of people they can communicate with and their horizons. The metaphor stuck with me. That image for me was a very powerful image, and I always felt the desire to make my world bigger. And now Elizabeth is a Spanish teacher. I guess she dropped out of Japanese, but discovered Spanish. And she's a Spanish immersion teacher. So, yes, we do. We think, many of us often think and tell our students that learning a new language is mind-broadening and horizon-expanding. But for many today, the invitation of no fences looks pretty horrible, and the comfort of fences is very high. So does language learning expand people's world horizons? Does it help break down fences and prejudice? Does it make people more tolerant of difference, more empathic toward fellow humans, less xenophobic? Actually, we have very little research on this. And how multilingual does the world need to be really when we have English as the lingua franca, the international language, the killer language, potentially? Listen to youth voices in schools in the UK. One of them said, I feel there is no point in learning languages. Everyone speaks English. And another one said, I think in 100 years or so, you can just speak and a computer will automatically translate. And Europhobia in the present UK climate, is it associated with linguaphobia, the phobia to learn languages? Lambers, Dowdy, and Thompson, and also a study by the British Council by Tinsley and Dolezal, find that maybe it's one of many influences, but there is no necessary relationship. And everyone agrees that whatever the political persuasions and the effect it's having on phobia to learn languages, it is also very much complicated by a sharp social divide in language study in the UK. Compulsory for all pupils aged 14 to 16, the language of study is compulsory in only 20% of state schools, but 74% of fee-paying independent schools. And across all schools in the UK, students of lower academic ability or with special education needs are more excluded from the study of language. So what we know is that the mere study of a new language does not guarantee more openness to social justice critiques of the world. A study quite a few years ago by Ryoko Kubota and colleagues undertook a survey of students taking Spanish, Japanese, and Swahili in college in the United States. And they asked these students, does foreign language learning invite you to reflect on issues of race, gender, class, and social justice? And basically their conclusion was that the students were saying, no, not really, and why should it? I'm here to learn language. So what pedagogies might leverage language learning into a transformative experience that would awaken all students to the relevance of race, gender, class, and social justice in the study of language and in living in the world? Some pedagogy that would awaken all students to empathy towards fellow humans and to less xenophobia. and what role can language teacher education play in this social justice goal? Let me move on to the neoliberal ideologies for language study, the rationalization that studying a new language gives you a competitive edge in global markets. This is probably addressed to almost everyone. Study a language, it increases your chances in life of upward mobility, better jobs, better pays. Is that really true? Do we have any research to show it? Well, there is a study by my colleague at Georgetown, Nick Subtirelu, and he looked at online job advertisements in the United States. He collected thousands of them, and eventually he pared it down to about 300, less than 300, requiring Spanish or not mentioning any Spanish. These jobs were carefully statistically matched for level of education, sector of the occupation or the job, the required experience, etc. And they were also very widely ranging in pay, advertised pay, all the way from $15,000 a year, which is very, very little, to about $150,000, $100,000. And here's what he found: a wage penalty for jobs requiring Spanish in the US. After very careful, hugely technical statistical analysis of the two carefully matched groups of advertisements, after qualitative in-depth study of the discourse in those advertisements, he had to conclude that bilinguals, if they are Spanish bilinguals, yes, they are required, yes, they are wanted, yes, they are mentioned in ads, but those ads have a starting offered pay of less rather than more than similar jobs with no mention of bilingual skills. So whose multilingualism is really the question to know who is going to benefit and get that edge in the global market. All multilinguals frequently experience vulnerability. We are being positioned by others as a novice, a foreigner, an outside member, a not capable speaker. We're being told that our language is not good enough. Look at this example, heart-wrenching, from a master's student many years ago. She wrote, "I did not think I was weak in my grammar, but when I got comments from a lot of professors about my grammar, I still feel I'm not a legitimate academic writer. Their comment made me to think I am not academically appropriate, but still need to go to ESL English classes to fix my grammar. I feel often I'm a long-term patient in a hospital to get a 10-year-long surgery." Loaded with negative emotions, a very painful experience of being told constantly, your language is not good enough. It's not up to the academic standards that you want to achieve. But while all experience vulnerability, there are systemic structural forces stacking the deck against certain groups more than others. So it's never just about language. It surely is about language, and we do have a lot of linguicism in the world, but it's also about race and ethnicity, class, occupation and wealth, religion, gender, age, sexual orientation, or any of the other socially created categories that cause to have different isms in different communities and different societies. So many multilinguals in marginalized communities constantly experience their multilingualism as a burden rather than a fact of life. All along, while many multilinguals with more privilege are able to experience it as a romanticized and commodified gift that adds to that privilege. In language learning, inequities manifest themselves in whose multilingualism is accepted and praised, whose multilingualism is viewed as a problem, often to be eradicated, or at least negotiated and controlled, and whose multilingualism remains invisible. So how aware are language teachers of these paradoxical inequities of language learning? And what can teacher educators do to raise this awareness?